With us tonight, Senior Policy Advisor for the President, Stephen Miller. Stephen, good to have you with us, and what a week it has been. Let's start with a backdrop for this, if I may, and that is suddenly we are hearing from Schumer, from Pelosi, and several others that they want to negotiate with the president and are ready to sit down and talk about USMCA, gun control, you name it, apparently. They seem to think they suddenly have the upper hand with the president. Your reaction?
Well, I do agree that Senate Democrats are probably terrified about the cliff they're being driven over by Pelosi and the radical election nullifying Democrats in the House of Representatives. And so I don't doubt that's the case. But let's also be clear what the even deeper fear is. The deepest fear of all is the deep state is terrified of being exposed, Lou. What we have right now is a situation in which the Attorney General of the United States and John Durham are going to get to the bottom of what really happened in 2016. And we're going to find out what went on and what was done to try and sabotage this president and try to sabotage this administration. And that has the deep state and their Democrat allies terrified.
And terrified, it seems, of what is a highly unusual effort at what is a bizarre plot at best, not even the stuff of fiction because it is so implausible. But the idea that they would make much of the president asking a foreign leader to meet or talk with his attorney general and to accommodate the law enforcement and national security investigative needs of this country, an ally of Ukraine, on what basis would that be irregular?
Well, I have some breaking news, Lou. The President of the United States is the nation's highest-ranking law enforcement officer. You know, it seems like some of our Democrats need a civics lesson. And just because Joe Biden may be running for president doesn't mean that he's immune from scrutiny. It doesn't mean that his family is immune from scrutiny for corrupt behavior in the Ukraine and in China. And the reality is that the President of the United States is doing the American people a profound service by getting to the bottom of corruption in Ukraine. And all Americans have a right to know how our taxpayer dollars are being spent and whether former high-ranking officials engaged in corrupt behavior and whether or not Ukraine or anyone in Ukraine engaged in interference in 2016.
There is, as I suggested at the outset, some concern that the president, in the face of this onslaught, no matter how rickety a contraption this so-called impeachment inquiry is being asked by the Dems in, if you will, a proffer, perhaps as a bribe, or just outright intimidation to take up gun control, to take up various issues and legislation that they've had absolutely no interest in accommodating him previously. This is a sordid and tasteless sort of initiative, don't you think, on the part of the radical Dems?
Lou, the Democrats have truly no depth to which they will not sink in their craven pursuit of power. And that's what this is all about, Lou, right? It's about power. You know, you've talked about these issues for so many years on your show. You've talked about the betrayal of the American worker because of offshoring, outsourcing, and misguided trade deals. You've talked about the betrayal of American families because of open border policies and misguided foreign policies. The president stood up in 2016 and said, enough. I'm putting a stop to the selling out, the betrayal, and even the crucifying of the American middle class in this country. And they are trying to say, we're not going to let the American people have the leadership and have the government that they want. And this president is standing in the breach and saying he's going to fight for the American worker.
And he has done so splendidly and strongly throughout. Yet over in the Senate, there's Senate Bill 386. The rights for legal immigrants legislation that would double the size of H-1B visas, and in so doing give most of those visas to China and to India. And it's also, without a question, sponsored by Mike Lee and signed on to by a host of otherwise, well, generally reasonable people previously. Is the president going to veto the damn thing?
Well, I don't think that bill, as it's currently written, is going to be passing the Senate anytime soon. But the administration has made clear that our view on H-1Bs is that you cannot displace or replace American workers. And the president has taken unprecedented action in the immigration space to do exactly that, including most recently with the public charge regulation to keep newcomers from taking advantage of our welfare system. But I want to drill down to the heart, Lou, of what's happening in our country right now. You have people inside the executive branch, permanent career government officials, who do not recognize democracy. I know because I deal with some of these people.
You're talking about
every
the
day
deep state.
Or every week. I'm talking about the deep state,
right.
Lou. And everything we're trying to do to make working Americans have a better future is constantly blocked and sabotaged by the deep state. And we're breaking through, and we are winning, and we're going to keep on winning. But what you have with this current non-scandal, non-controversy, made-up phony story from this fake whistleblower about Ukraine, what you have is somebody inside the government, along with their allies, trying to overthrow a democratically elected president so they can get their policies that they want put in place. That's what's at stake for every American. Do you believe we should be governed by a democracy or not?
Well, I'm quite happy with this constitutional republic, and less than happy, as you know, with a deep state that is not only entrenched but expanding and increasingly powerful. When we look at for crying out loud, the complaint for the so-called whistleblower who happens to be a CIA officer. I mean, think about the absurdity of what we're talking about. Suddenly, I can't even imagine this, a CIA officer on hearsay is now a whistleblower. One wonders why he doesn't have a chain of command that he would want to follow as a CIA officer, and why he could not see the irony of spying on a president of the United States on U.S. soil, which is, by the way, a charge that he is not entitled to.
Right. The CIA's mission is overseas. Yeah, overseas surveillance is the CIA's mission. Not to try and conduct illicit operations on the president of the United States. First of all, if you read the complaint, right, it's public now, there's no firsthand nothing in that complaint.
Well, there's
no firsthand anything in that complaint, nor could there ever be, because the complaint is the fevered imagination of a deep state radical.
And by the way, I want to say where you're saying that. Michael Atkinson, the Inspector General of the intelligence community, who wrote a 4-page document of rationale for changing that complaint form, it is one of the most absurd documents I have ever seen. It is irrational, and it can only be explained by raising great questions of political corruption within the Inspector General's office itself, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion. Stephen,
one of the things, Lou, that I find so disappointing, Lou, is that the Democratic Party used to stand for liberal values in this country. They used to question power. Now you have a liberal bureaucracy and liberals in Washington, D.C. that worship intelligence community as being above reproach and worship deep state power. And that is fundamentally anti-liberal. Republicans and Democrats should be united in supporting this president.
I can't join you in bemoaning their move away from liberalism. I think liberalism deserves to die, and perhaps even a painful death. And by the way, that may be at hand because
they're just socialists. Now they're just socialists and Marxists, Lou.
They're what?
Not even liberals anymore. They're just socialists and Marxists.
Well, I don't know what else they are, but I can tell you this: they're working against the president of the United States and this country, and that's got to be stopped. Stephen Miller,
Lou.
We appreciate everything that you're doing for the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More